Hey everybody, come on in. We have another great guest today for you on Journeys with Jeff. John Sparks was born in Newfane, Vermont, and his road has led him all the way to West Hartford, where he is currently an associate with Whole Foods by Blueback Square. And he's going to tell us about how he got from Newfane to West Hartford. John?
Hi, how are you, Jeff?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tell us about, you were born in Newfane. Where is Newfane?
Well, it was actually South Newfane, which is part of Newfane, but it's you go up Route 30 outside of Brattleboro. From West Hartford, it would probably be about 2 hours drive.
Okay, and you were born. Is that rural? Is a rural area?
Yep, it's rural. I was actually born on a farm. My grandfather was born in the farmhouse itself. My father was born during the flood of 1938, and his parents were unable to get to the hospital, and he was born there. And then I was actually delivered at the farm myself by my father.
Wow! So your grandfather was born on the farm.
Yep. And my father.
And how did your grandfathers? Where did they come from?
Originally, my ancestors came from Connecticut. My great-great-grandfather, Ebenezer Sparks, moved up from Plainfield, Connecticut, up to Newfane back in the 1800s.
Wow. So your family goes back a long way in Connecticut and New England.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So you were born in the farmhouse yourself?
Yep.
How come you didn't go to a hospital?
No, they wanted to have me born at home. They were going to have midwives come to the farm to deliver me, and they didn't get there in time. And my mom went into labor, and my father actually delivered me.
Your father delivered you?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And so what was the family farm? What did your father grow or raise?
We had beef cows. We also had chickens. We had goats. My mom would milk the goats every morning. We had goat's milk instead of cow's milk on the farm. And we sent some of the cows away to auction, and the other ones we had for our own personal use.
And so you grew up, when you were growing up, but my father was born on a farm in North Dakota, and he used to tell me he'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and before he got on his horse and rode to school,
Yep.
he had 3 hours of chores to do. So was that what your life was like, or chores and then school?
Yeah. I mean, before I went to school in the morning, I would water. We also had horses, and I'd bring water out to the horses every morning. And then when I'd come home at night, we'd check to see if the chickens had any eggs. I was little at the time still too, but there were definitely chores.
Did you like it?
Yeah. One of my favorite things was every year after school ended, we'd go and we would hay all the fields. And I mean, we had 28 acres of land that we hayed, but we also hayed a lot of the neighbors' properties. And that would be about a week's worth of work. My dad would get a bunch of his buddies, and they'd all do that, and we'd have pretty much cookouts every night. And then when we were done with haying, we'd go up to Lake Champlain and go fishing. So it was neat. It was a good experience.
And was it your father who played baseball?
Oh, my whole family's played baseball.
So tell me about, did you play baseball on your farm?
My dad did. My grandfather was very much into baseball, and he had 3 sons, my dad and his 2 brothers, and my grandfather managed an independent baseball league team. And they had a field. The baseball field was in the back corner of the property, and they played the games right there.
Who came in and, I mean, you had to measure out the distance from the mound to the home base?
My dad and my grandfather, yep. My grandfather was very much into baseball.
Well, you know what movie that reminds me of?
Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was, wow.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit, so this is your grandfather?
Yep. That was my grandfather, like I said. And there were guys who played in the major leagues who played for my grandfather. My uncle Sonny was offered a contract by the Detroit Tigers and the St. Louis Cardinals. When he was in the Navy, he played baseball with Roger Maris. So we have a long history of baseball in our family.
Did you play too?
I did. I wasn't quite that good, but when I was younger, I played Little League. I was a shortstop and I was a pitcher. And I played up until about high school. When I was in high school, I played basketball a little bit. So we've always had lots of sports in my family.
Well, what high school did you go to?
I went to East Catholic in Manchester, Connecticut.
Oh, by that time, so you had moved from Vermont?
Yep. I moved from Vermont to Connecticut when I was 9 years old. My parents separated, and my mom was originally from Connecticut, and we moved down to Manchester. It was different than living in Vermont, but it was a really good experience.
How does a 9-year-old boy feel about the family breaking up? A lot of people have been through that.
It was really difficult.
It's tough. It's a tough transition, huh?
It was really difficult, and I used to go up and I'd see my father. I'd go up for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I'd go up every summer. So I used to spend every summer up on the farm, and it was nice, but it was tough,
I can imagine. 9 years old. So you came to...
I moved to Manchester, Connecticut, which was a completely different world from what I was used to.
Well, it must have seemed like the big city.
Oh, it was.
Right?
I remember I told one of my cousins one day, I was like, oh, this is a city. And she's like, this isn't a city, it's a town. But to me, it was, it could have been outer space. It was so different from what I was used to.
Did you play Little League baseball in Manchester, too?
Yep. I played baseball and I played football. I was on the Raiders. And then I played basketball as well.
And how about, you went to Manchester High?
East Catholic. I went to St. James, and then I went to East Catholic. I went there for 3 years, and I was a little mischievous, I'll put it that way. And I ended up actually going back up to Vermont and going to school there my senior year of school, which was really interesting because I knew all these kids when I was little, and then I met them 10 years later.
So you went to Vermont your senior year. That was back with your father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, kind of like some in your mind, you kind of wanted that to happen? Did you want to?
Probably part of it. Part of it, yeah. I'd say so.
Young boy needs a father, wants a father.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say that was definitely part of it. I can remember there were a couple times where I almost moved back up and I stayed down in Connecticut, which was probably for the best. My mom's always been the main person in my life, and I owe everything to her.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I come from a big family. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers that are older than me. My father and mother were both previously married, so they're all half brothers and half sisters. But to me, they're my brothers and my sisters, and they're all in their mid to late 50s. So there's an age gap between us. When they were teenagers, I was a little kid chasing after them.
Right.
But I come from a really big family. I also did have a sister that passed away when she was a baby. She died of SIDS, and that was part of the reason that my parents, I don't think, made it. My father was an alcoholic, and when that happened, he kind of just acted like she didn't exist and started drinking because it was easier to deal with it that way than facing what had happened.
Right.
Right.
So,
but yeah, I love all my brothers and sisters, and they've all been very good to me.
You still felt that you had, given your father's issues with the divorce and the raising the family and the farm and alcohol and stuff like that, you still look back upon him as being a good father in the balance?
I feel like I have 2 separate fathers. I have the father from when I was very young, who drank a lot and fought with my mom, to the man who, after my parents separated, met my stepmother, Joanne, stopped drinking, and was a very sweet, sincere man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Big contrast, wow.
Yep.
So he became a different person in your eyes.
Once he stopped drinking.
Right.
You
So you went back to Vermont for your senior year in high school.
Yep.
And you graduated, of course.
Yep.
And what happened after that?
After that, I had most of my friends were in Connecticut, so I moved back down to Connecticut, and you know, I partied a little bit as any late teenage kid does.
Yeah.
You know, I went from job to job. I had a job with a friend of mine, Nick Pelagian, that I went to grade school with, and we stayed friends. And I worked at Papa John's pizza place in East Hartford, Connecticut. You know, just kind of making a little bit of money like a teenager does. And I met my ex-wife. And we kind of, you know, we became friends and we started dating. And that's how I met my ex-wife. And from there, I got a job working up at Yukon. I opened a restaurant with my friend Nick, Wings Over Yukon. And there's a couple around in the area now. There's Wings Over West Hartford. There's a Wings Over Newington. So it was a really cool experience doing that as a, you know, somebody 21, 22 working at a college doing that. It was a pretty cool experience. And from there, me and my wife dated for a couple years, and we got married when I was 23. So I was still fairly young. And you know, we did the whole getting by and trying to save money thing, and we lived in Manchester at the time, and we were married for a couple years, and we had my son Riley. And before I had Riley, I had always kind of dealt with anxiety issues and, you know, kind of a little bit of depression. I don't know if that was because of my parents or, you know, whatever. And then I had my son, and it just changed my world. And, you know, I still kind of was... I see my kids, and that's why I work as hard as I do, is for them.
And you're also, I know you like to, you're quite an avid fisherman.
I love fishing. I have loved fishing since the time I was 2 years old. Like I said, we used to go up to Lake Champlain, and it's, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's a really big lake, and it runs right between Vermont and New York. And we would go up to my dad's friend's property he had on Lake Champlain, and as soon as we would get there, I'd want to fish. And of course, my mom and dad were concerned because they didn't want me going down the lake. I was so little. But part of the lake would overflow into this person's backyard, and there was probably maybe 6 inches of water in this guy's yard. And they set me up, and they cast the line out for me, and they set up a little milk crate for me, and they stuck me out there. And I'm out there for maybe 5-10 minutes, and they're trying to get everything in the house and unpack the car, and I caught a little fish. It was maybe no bigger than 10 or 11 inches long.
That's big. That's a big fish.
Yeah, but I came up the yard, and I was yelling that I had a fish, and I have loved it ever since then.
What kind of a fish was it?
It was a yellow perch, which is a common fish, but it was really, there was pictures of it, and when I was 4 years old, my dad took me fishing. He had bought me a new pole, and the first fish I ever caught on it was a big bass, and it was about 1.5 to 2 feet long. And I was so excited, and my dad mounted the bass, and it was in my house, and he used to always point at that and be like, my son caught that when he was 4. And that was a really cool thing. At this point, I go when I can. I have kayaks, so I like to go out kayaking, and I'll go fishing in those. And
where do you go around here? Is there some spots around Hartford, or do you go up to Vermont?
I go up to Vermont quite a bit. My brother's still up there. We go up in the summertime, and he likes going out in the woods, so we'll go out and we'll find a little brook and fish for trout. Or in the wintertime, I like to go out and go ice fishing. So that's always fun, and I'm looking forward to probably doing that in a couple days, actually. I'm going to head up.
I've heard about, everybody's probably heard about ice fishing. How do you go out in a frozen lake or pond, right?
Yep.
And first of all, how do you determine that the ice is thick enough to support you? And then how do you dig, what tool do you use to dig the hole
Well, first of all, I am a chicken, so I make sure it's been cold for a really long time before I even go. And usually when I go, I'll make sure that there's other people out there, and I'll kind of walk out and check with them and ask them how thick the ice is. And, you know, after I know that it's safe, I have a auger which drills the hole for you. Every year I kind of save up my money a little bit, and I'll buy something. A couple years ago, I bought the auger. And
An auger, it's called?
yep, it's like a drill that you drill into the ice.
And then ice fishing. So even in the cold, frozen ice of winter, the fish are swimming around
Fish are
underneath.
still down there. They're still alive, and they still got to eat, and they're hungry.
And what do you use for bait? What do you do? What do you put on the hook?
Well, when we go for the smaller fish. They have fish it's really small. It's called a smelt, but they're fun to catch. And you just have a little lure, and you put a little piece of minnow on there, and you find them, and they're pretty easy to catch. I go with my niece's husband a lot, and he's an incredible fisherman, hunter. He's good at everything outdoors. He catches these fish, and then he uses them for bait, and they have big lake trout in there. So he catches really big fish.
Wow.
It's fun. It's nice to be in nature.
And you go with your son.
Yep.
I know you
Yep.
told me that you take your son.
Yep.
And does he kind of
He does.
catch the fishing fever like you have?
He likes it when he's catching fish. He gets bored if he's not, And he's also a teenager, so there's times where he'd rather be hanging out with his friends. But yeah, he likes it. My daughter goes, and she's not so crazy about it, but she goes.
Yeah, yeah. And where are they in school? Where do they go?
They live in Meriden. I share custody with their mother, so I'm close to them. I'm in Cromwell, so I'm like a town over.
So Meriden, is that Platt? What's high school is in Meriden? Platt, Maloney?
Maloney, yep.
Maloney.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
So you went into business, Wings Over
Stores.
Over Stores.
Yep.
And how did that work out?
It was
you
good.
Parted ways with
Yep,
you guys?
I parted ways. Yep. Like I said, I'm still friends with the guy that I work there with. It just sometimes being friends with somebody isn't always having a business with them. I'll put it that way. But I parted ways, and I had another job in Manchester. It was another pizza place I worked at the time. And I was there for quite a few years, and they gave me, it was a good place. It was accommodating with me raising my kids, and about a little over 8 years ago, I got a job working at Whole Foods, and I've been there ever since. It's a really good company to work for. I'll put it that way. I've met a lot of very good friends working there. I've met a lot of very nice customers working there.
So you're at the Whole Foods, the big one by Blueback Square, the big Whole
one.
Foods, right?
Yep.
You're there, and you work in what section?
I work in prepared foods. I work in the pizza area. If anybody goes into the Whole Foods, they've probably heard my voice once or twice. I'm known for doing the announcements at the store.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm a team trainer in prepared foods, so I, like to show people the ins and outs, and I have an outgoing, friendly personality.
Yeah, you do. You've been there for, what did you say, 7 years ago?
8 years.
8 years ago?
A little over 8 years, yep.
So what, in the 8 years, what are some of you probably have had lots of interesting stories to tell about various customers and patrons and people.
I've definitely seen some interesting things. It's an interesting job. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what is it? What is the most interesting aspect of it? The job itself, or the people you interact with, your peers?
I would say my coworkers. I've never met a group of people that before I worked there that were so caring, and there really are very nice people that work there.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I was going through my divorce, and that was obviously a very difficult time, I think, for anyone who's gone through a divorce. It's never fun. And they really supported me, and they stood behind me, and they showed loyalty to me, and I appreciate that, you know. So I try to show loyalty to them, you know.
Well, talk about loyalty. Are you loyal to the New England Patriots?
I am loyal to the New England Patriots.
Well, they lost. They lost.
No,
Did
no,
they? No.
no, they did not lose. They won.
That's what I was
Jeff,
thinking of-
you are full of fake news over here.
was
I
thinking-
cannot believe that.
I was thinking of Dallas.
No,
So,
yeah, well,
they
come
lost.
on. Well, and we know Georgia didn't make it in college football.
That broke my heart. Yeah, but look at Alabama.
Yeah, well, that was
Clemson embarrassed them.
They did. That was a surprise.
So the Patriots are playing this weekend.
They're playing this weekend.
Who are they playing? KC or
Kansas City? In Kansas City.
They're going into Kansas City.
Yep.
What's the Kansas City's got to be favored, right?
They are favored, but it's not as much as you would think. It's a pretty close. I think it's going to be a close game.
So you got the Patriots in Kansas City in the AFC. Who's in the NFC?
The NFC, you have the Saints and the Rams.
Okay, and are those the last 4 teams standing right now?
Yep.
So the winner goes to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So
So we know it's going to be the Patriots again.
Okay, the Patriots against the Rams and
the Rams.
God,
Wouldn't
the
that be
Saints.
something? Because then you'd have the bookend. You'd have the Patriots against the Rams, and that's what started the dynasty. And then you have the Patriots against the Rams, and that would be the end. And of course, Tom is going to win again because he's the best. We all know he's the greatest.
Well, I tell you, I'm torn.
And then he can ride off into the sunset.
Being the Georgia Bulldog that I am, I'm torn because the running back for the Rams is Gurley.
Gurley is from
and the running back for the Patriots is Michelle, right?
Yeah.
Sony Michelle.
Yeah.
And both of those guys were running back for Georgia.
Yeah.
So and they're both awfully good.
They are. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's I kind of like the way football used to be, when it was more of a 17-10, 14-10 game instead of this 54-51. You know, I like football is supposed to have a little bit of defense in it, but I mean, they're incredible athletes, you know, and they're.
Well, what do you think has changed? What do you think has been the cause of more scoring? Do you think they kind of tweak the rules a little bit because the fans like to see they like to see the scoring, so they make it tougher on the defenses? Or what's your theory?
Yes, I think that's a big part of it. I think that they don't let them. There was a sack in the last Patriots game, and the guy just tackled him, and they called a penalty on it. Are we playing two-hand touch football, or are we playing football?
Right. Right.
But
Wow. So, the Patriots, and are you a Red Sox guy?
I am a Red Sox guy. Yep.
Oh, I love them. They were great. They had a great season.
They did.
And the Celtics, they're disappointing.
They are disappointing.
I thought they were going to be much better at this point. They're still good. They're a good team, but I thought that they would have a much better record at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with them.
I don't know. They'll hopefully get it together.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So at any rate, your family, your son is, how old is your son?
My son is 13.
And your daughter is?
9.
So 13, he goes to, what is it, middle school somewhere? Or?
Yep. He goes to middle school in Middletown. He goes to Lincoln. He goes to Thomas Edison, pardon me. And he's in 8th grade, so he's next year he's going to be going to high school. He's deciding if he wants to go to Wilcox or if he wants to go to Maloney. So he's deciding between a technical high school or if he's going to go to public high school.
So basically, though, you like being a father. You like being with your kids. You're really dedicated to them.
I love being with my kids.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part about being not being with my ex, is just not being with my kids all the time, But it is what it is. I just try to appreciate the time that I have with them.
And do you think they're okay? I mean, again, remembering how it was for you when you were 9 years old, it was probably a little bit tough for them. For any kids, whenever a family breaks up,
Yep.
the kids always are the ones probably suffer the most.
Yep, that was one thing that, because of my background, I always wanted to make my marriage work. And then when it didn't, it was tough, But it was not a healthy environment for them to grow up in. I think they're better off the way it is.
Well, it's not like you didn't try. So you tried. At least you know that you gave it a shot. And so, with all of the from Newfane, Vermont, all those years ago, up to Whole Foods today, along the road, what are some of the most what experiences did you learn from life? What were some of the most important things you've learned about yourself or about life?
The most important thing that matters, and it doesn't have to be biological family, it could just be your friends. The most important thing is family. It's not things, it's not cars, it's not who has the biggest house. It's family. It's family, and it's your friends, and it's being with people you love and appreciating what you have, because you don't know when you're not going to have something. So just appreciate it.
Right. So it sounds like the word, the operative word that you use there is love, I think.
Probably don't deserve it, but I've been very, very blessed, and I just wanted to come on here and talk about my life and my experiences, and just how grateful I am for my family and my friends and everything I have in my life personally.
That's very profound. Very good. Well, thank you. John Sparks, thank you very much. We're about out of time, and want to thank you all for viewing, and keep tuned in. Tell your friends we're on YouTube, and we're on other stations in the greater Hartford area. So stay in touch, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.